I'm going to call the Honourable Rhys Dyson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Roi rangatira mā, tēnei te mihi kia koutou I runga I te kaupapa o te rā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. It is a really important debate that we're having, and I want to acknowledge everyone that's contributed to it. It's the one opportunity in the year that committees get a chance to hold the ministers of various portfolios to account, and I want to acknowledge the ministers that do front up to the committees and generally answer questions to the best of their ability, not always as well as we had hoped, but certainly to the best of their ability. There's a few comments that I want to make specifically in relation to the conservation portfolio. This is the 7th year in a row that we have seen a reduction in the overall budget for the Department of Conservation, and frankly it's getting to the point where every time the department has a bit of a crisis on its hand, for example a stoat and Kapiti, they put out the begging bowl and they have to say, is there anybody that would like to donate so that we can perform our core statutory responsibilities? And I think that's an embarrassment to New Zealand and New Zealanders, and the ministers, I think, misrepresent the position that the department has been put in by the lack of support from their cabinet colleagues. Other points that I want to mention of concern that were raised during the debate at the committee. The first is the lack of reclassification of stewardship land and the implication that that might have, particularly in two areas that are of current concern. One is in Ruataniwha and the other is in the Huranui, where conservation land is being proposed as part of a land swap in order for the creation of a dam. Because those areas are currently stewardship land, in the most part stewardship land, there has been a tendency to reduce the public concern by dismissing them as land of little value, and we know from the work the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment has done on the need for proper classification of stewardship land, that that land is often not of low value at all. And I'd really urge the Minister for the Environment and the Minister of Conservation to take the report of the PCE and do something with it. The second concern that I want to put on the record is the fact that the Minister for the Environment is now responsible for leading our marine reserves legislation and change. And I want to say that's not because of the personality of the Minister for the Environment. Fewer national members are more passionate than him about marine protection, and I acknowledge the work that he has done over recent years in particular. That's not the concern that I have. The concern I have is that he operates under a different criteria as Minister for the Environment. The current marine protection legislation, led by the Minister of Conservation, has a preservation and protection as the basis of that legislation, whereas the EEZ legislation, which is where the Minister for the Environment is likely to lead, has a sustainable management ethos. They are quite different foundations and cause a considerable concern in the transfer. So it's not about the personality of the Honourable Dr Nick Smith. I'm quite comfortable with him amongst all of the national, in fact he's the only one amongst all of the National Party ministers that I think gives a toss in this area. It's what is going to be the basis of our future marine legislation. So I wish him every success in ensuring that conservation and preservation is at the basis of the future legislation. The next point I want to mention is about the inability of the Minister to answer some of the questions in time, and her refusal to answer questions about unsuccessful budget bids. She was the only Minister I have seen before a select committee who has refused to acknowledge that in some areas her bids were unsuccessful. She should have been upfront and honest with not just the committee and the Parliament, but with the public of New Zealand. I've seen other ministers front up to those questions. She refused. I've subsequently asked the Prime Minister. He's refused to have anything to do with that as well. And the last point I want to make is in regard to conservation partnerships. Of course these are a good thing. Working with philanthropic organisations, with business, with individuals, with community organisations together to progress a shared goal. But it goes over the line of partnership when the department is dependent on donations in order to fulfil its core functions. It's got that way in the area of pest management and control. It's got that way in areas of planting, and it's got that way in the areas of education. Those are core statutory functions which the department is unable to perform on its own.
I'm calling Denise Roach.